Joining us now, Senator Republican Jill Vogel. And Jill Vogel ran for lieutenant governor in 2017. She won the primary and then was defeated in the general election, the blue wave of 2017, by Justin Fairfax. And Jill is the chairman of the Privilege and Elections Committee in Richmond State Senate. And yesterday, she muscled through the ERA amendment out of her committee on an 8-6 vote. 2 Republican senators on the committee voting in favor of it. Republican senator who's with us now, Jill Vogel, and Republican senator from Virginia Beach, Bill D. Steff. Senator Vogel, great to have you with us.
Good morning. It is so great to be with you. It's so long overdue. I've missed you terribly.
Oh, that's music to my ears. Thank you. And I'm going to be in Bill Stanley's office tomorrow doing my show, so be sure and stop in. We'll be there 6 to 10 a.m. Senator, it took a lot of courage yesterday for you to get the ERA amendment bill out of your committee. Tell us how you did that and give us your thoughts as to why you're in favor of it.
Well, here's the deal. I appreciate that great compliment and would like to accept that as courage. The rules are the rules in the Senate, and I happened to listen to the tail end of the show yesterday morning where you had somebody on talking about the Equal Rights Amendment, and the person was chastising me for having the bill come before the Privileges and Elections Committee at all. And the argument that was made was the deadline to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment passed in 1982. And therefore, it was wrong of me, one, to have the bill be on my docket at all and have it come before the Privileges and Elections Committee, and 2, it would be wrong of me to support it. And so I will tell you, in both cases, that's just simply not true. First, the rules in the Senate do not allow me to exercise independently my own judgment about what's rightly before or not rightly before the Senate of Virginia. Our rules, unlike the rules in the House, say if it's introduced, it goes on my docket. So I don't have that prerogative. And so I was happy and eager to put every bill that was on my docket before my committee, and then it's up to the discretion of each member to decide whether it's properly before them. So for all the reasons that people have seen on email alerts and elsewhere around Virginia, for people who got all hysterical about the Equal Rights Amendment, that somehow this was an abortion bill, which it is absolutely not. Or somehow, if you vote for this, churches were going to lose their tax-exempt status, that the Catholic Church that only ordains men is somehow now going to lose its tax-exempt status. That could not be further from the truth. Because, to her point, the deadline to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment passed in 1982. Ironically, a Republican Congress overwhelmingly adopted the Equal Rights Amendment, and it was in the Republican Party platform every single year between 1940 and 1980. So to say that we are proud to stand there in that committee and take what many people saw as a symbolic vote in favor of women is something I was actually proud to do. And when Senator Sturdivant got up and spoke very eloquently on behalf of this amendment, he said just that. Why would we not want to? When someone comes forward and asks us to cast a vote for or against this, if it's the right thing to do, and equality is the right thing, and recognizing women and women's equality and women's accomplishments, I'm sitting there as the chair of the Privileges and Elections Committee as a woman, when, it wasn't that long ago that there were no women in the Senate of Virginia. I'm proud to cast that vote. And one, I'm proud to have put it on the docket. And in fact, we had a meeting to hear all the constitutional amendments that we scheduled for November. We couldn't get a quorum. So this was simply putting all those constitutional amendments back on the calendar. Holding that meeting, we heard a whole bunch of different bills. And I was proud, wanting to put it on there, to vote on it, and to vote it out. But the thing that has really killed me is that in such an important session, in the 400th session of the General Assembly, which is this year, which started yesterday, the fact that conservatives have such an amazing story to tell, to talk about what we can do in Virginia to implement the Trump tax cuts and align our tax code with those tax cuts so that Virginians get the benefit of those tax cuts, to talk about what we can do with transportation, to talk about pushing back on what the governor wants to do with gun control. We have so many important things that conservatives can rally around. And the fact that somebody would pick this issue to gin up a bunch of hysteria over when, again, by their own admission, the people who got up and spoke on this said the deadline to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment has passed. We are here to talk about this for a litany of other reasons. But then to stand up there and make arguments like this is about abortion or it's about women being topless, I mean, I found that embarrassing and thought it made people look really, it was just embarrassing. That's not what we're there to talk about. And how does that make us look to women? We have an amazing story to tell. So that's why I was there to hear it on the docket, and that's why I was there to support it.
We're chatting with State Senator Jill Vogel, Republican from the Shenandoah Valley, former candidate, Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor 2017. Senator, again, I'm going to say that what you did yesterday was not only courageous, it was extremely politically astute based on what you just said, which is we have all these great topics, the Trump tax cut, Kirk Cox trying to align that to save hardworking Virginians money, transportation opportunities. We had all this stuff going on. And so what you did yesterday is you got this off the table on the first day, which allows you to go on to talk about the other thing. So just as a point of clarification, and then I want you to address your critics, and I'm going to go through those one by one. If this passes the House and the Senate and the governor signs it, it becomes a constitutional amendment that gets on the ballot, right?
So it doesn't require the governor's signature for the constitutional amendment. And two things have to happen. First, it has to be heard to the Senate floor for a vote. The same has to happen on the House side. And on the House side, the rules are different. The committee chair actually does have the prerogative to make a decision. That if it's not, that there's a deadline has passed, and he doesn't believe it is properly before the House, then he may, on his own discretion, decide not to put it on the docket. I don't have that prerogative under the Senate rules. The House does. So it has to be voted on the House side, has to go to the full House, and then because it's an amendment to the Constitution and we're putting it to the vote, it's a ballot question, effectively. It's a ballot question. Should Virginia call on Congress? So then we have to have an intervening election in which all 140 members of the House and Senate in Virginia are up for election. And then starts all over again, and it has to come back to my committee, go to the Senate, back to the House, go to the House, and then, only then, does it go on the ballot. So it's a long process for something to actually go to a ballot question to the voters of Virginia, because that's what this is about.
Right, and then let the people decide, right? I mean, Victoria...
But one underlying issue that we're missing here is that if there's all this hysteria about the multiple things that this is going to set in motion, if we, suddenly women will be fighter pilots and they'll be in the military and, we'll have abortion rights and, there'll be all these awful things happening. Well, you can't have it both ways. If that's true, then how can you also argue that the deadline to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment has long since passed and that this isn't even properly before us and it's only a symbolic vote? Well, if it's only a symbolic vote, then let us cast the vote and move on. Let us say something good about equality for women.
That's my argument.
Virginia say, we feel great about women's equality,
right,
and move on.
Yeah, move on. Exactly.
Of all the issues to draw attention to, and of all the things to encourage Republicans to say something negative about, why would we choose this of all things?
Well, I think you're right. That's why, again, I want to compliment you for getting this off the table and out of your committee on day one. As soon as you got there, it's out, it's gone. And look, I just had Victoria Cobb on, the president of the Family Foundation in Virginia. I have a lot of respect for her. And she had a poll that was sanctioned by Mason-Dixon that said this was very unfavorable in Virginia. So if the poll results from the Mason-Dixon poll are correct, then according to Virginia, it's going to get on the ballot and it's going to lose and be done with it. I mean, let's let the people decide. I mean, I'm always in favor.
Afraid. I could not agree more. I'm not afraid of letting any issue go on the ballot, put to the voters. And in this case, I don't believe that ultimately that's actually going to be the case. However, again, if we're simply asking voters to say, how do you feel about women's equality? I'm not afraid of that either.
Right.
Again, if the deadline to ratify is passed, and many states have rescinded their decision to ratify, and this is something that a Republican Congress, the Republican Party had in its platform for many years, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to say that women's equality is a value that we as Republicans embrace. And I do not believe that issues like women being topless in public are going to flow from a question like this, being put to my committee or to the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have public decency laws. That's why when you see some of these arguments, the intelligent person simply has to ask themselves, wait a minute, does that seem possible? I mean, we've had similar constitutional amendments to guarantee equality for minorities. And, I'm sure there were the same kinds of arguments made then. And, we would look back in time and say we would be embarrassed. We would be embarrassed to hear those same arguments today. And I feel very much the same way about arguments against equality for women.
Are saying, and there's three main things. Number one, Victoria Cobb today said that why would you be in favor of transferring state power to the federal government? How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm not in favor of transferring state power to the federal government. The underlying idea is we're just simply making a statement about equality for women. Period. That was it. And this notion that somehow this is about something more than that. And again, Glenn Sturtevant said that in the committee. If the deadline is to wrap up and Congress is not able to act, then all we have is a request in front of us to whether or not we're going to go vote for equality or not for equality. It's that simple. It's a symbolic vote.
I had Susan Stimson on the other day. By the way, she's doing much better. I had Susan on the other day and Victoria Cobb, and they both said if you pass this and it becomes ratified, that it will write in taxpayer-funded abortion into the Constitution. How do you respond to that?
I would say that is just not. Again, this is about abortion. I don't see that connection. I mean, there was some testimony about that yesterday, and as it's been, sort of drawn out in discussion, abortion is legal. So if you have the Equal Rights Amendment voted on by my committee yesterday, or voted on by Virginia, it doesn't change the substance of anything with respect to the laws vis-a-vis abortion rights or the funding of abortions, period.
So,
again, change any of the laws vis-a-vis churches and their tax-exempt status. That's something that so many people who have heard this have raised. And as soon as someone explains to them that it's the free exercise clause that protects the rights of religious groups. When we said that divorce was legal, there are many churches that don't recognize divorce. They didn't lose their tax-exempt status. The same thing when we said gay marriage was legal. Churches that do not So I think that picture, which is somebody chose, perhaps wrongly, this as the core issue of the legislative session, that they wanted to direct conservative attention and resources to rally conservatives. And I would just simply say people should take a step back for a moment and consider all of the other really important issues that we could be talking about this session that cast conservatives in a light that demonstrates to all of the people that we're trying to reach the good that we are doing in the Commonwealth of Virginia when it comes to taxes and transportation and governance and being fiscally conservative and talking about public safety. And the fact that we are being waylaid by a discussion like this one that gets so down in the weeds and is frankly so misleading and then puts things out there that are just factually wrong is, to me, quite embarrassing. And I'm very sorry for that. And I understand that reasonable minds may disagree and reasonable people may differ. But if in the end that you know that it is of no consequence, why would you have that argument? We're on the same team here.
All right, so
Victoria and me and Susan Simpson and all of us, we're on the same team. And so because I let a bill come before my committee and because, I believe in casting that vote I've cast this vote before. It's come before the Privilege and Elections Committee many times before. And many Republicans have voted for it. And there was no hysteria around this. We voted it out. It was fine. It was no big deal. And this was the year that someone made the decision that this was going to be a big issue. And I respect that. That is a prerogative of any coalition, any group to decide what their legislative agenda is going to include. Far be it from me to pass judgment on that. But I would just consider that there are so many really important issues in our budget. We want to talk about funding. We want to talk about abortion. We want to talk about lots of social issues or the things that impact social issues. There are a lot of other issues out there that actually do have a legitimate consequence, that do have a substantive impact on what happens to men and women in Virginia.
Jill Susan Stimson, who ran for lieutenant governor in 2013, I think, said yesterday, look, she said, John, you're a Catholic. If this passes, Catholic churches are going to be forced to have women priests, and if they don't, their tax-exempt status will get stripped. True or false?
100% false. So I'm a lawyer. Okay. I represent churches. I represent nonprofits. I actually practice constitutional law. And let me tell you one thing. The same thing could have been said when they legalized divorce. In churches that did not recognize divorce, they could have said, oh, you're going to lose your tax-exempt status. Of course not. And the same thing happened when they said gay marriage was legal. When the United States Supreme Court issued that decision, there are many, many churches who, of course, do not recognize gay marriage. Have they lost their tax-exempt status? Of course not. The free exercise clause, that's where she is misunderstanding what the law says. It is the free exercise clause that protects the rights of religious groups. You cannot force the Catholic Church, just like you cannot force any church to change.
I've got 30 seconds. I got 30 seconds. Yes. Dave LaRocque went on the record a week ago and said, you pass this and women will be able to go around topless in Virginia. Now, I have no position on this one way or the other. I'm an agnostic on it. Is that true or false?
That's 100% false, because we have decency laws and public nudity laws. And those laws will still stand even if we have equality. And again, nothing in this vote is going to change that. That's just simply not true.
Jill Vogel, trucking the truth, debunking the myths, voted yesterday to get the Equal Rights Amendment out of her committee. 8-6 it passed with her vote, and Bill D. Steph also stood of it for it. It is going to pass and get on the ballot.